G20 Summit, the closing ceremony. It's also the handing over ceremony is expected to get underway any minute now. And Sophie Mokoena, international news editor, is with us here in studio. Sophie, certainly this is the moment South Africa has been waiting for, that handover. But at the same time, it's going to be just as critical to hear from the outgoing chair on his remarks on what has been done and what still needs to be done.
I think he's also going to talk about the resolutions and the agreement in terms of this summit. We will have a better sense of where to from here with these countries in the coming 12 months as we build to South Africa. And after, we'll see that handing over to South Africa with President Ramaphosa officially in terms of this summit being introduced as the new president of the G20. And of course, we know that the official start of South Africa as the leader of this important group is in December. And therefore, we expect on the 1st of December that there's going to be a huge program in South Africa where South Africa will be unveiling its logo, the theme, and also program of action in terms of the country being the leader of this important group. And therefore, any minute from now, we are going to see the official start of the deliberations by the current president, then moving to the introduction of South Africa as the incoming president of the G20 countries. Earlier on, before I came in, I saw President Ramaphosa in the hall or in the summit venue, and I think they were still tightening up in terms of the behind-the-scenes stuff, so that when President Lula is delivering that statement, all countries are supporting the communique or the statement that is going to be delivered by President Lula. But I think as soon as they start, you will be able to dip in and bring that closing ceremony to South African viewers, to the regional viewers, and also to the continental viewers, because you know that it's the first for Africa to host the G20, and therefore it is a project for Africa, similar to 2010 World Cup. It was a World Cup for Africa, and this time around, the good thing is that much as South Africa is the only member of the G20 from the continent, now we have the AU, a member of the G20 family.
And certainly speaking a lot to issues that even you and I were touching on yesterday, the debt issue when it comes to Africa, also at the same time, trade and industrial policy. But before we even continue with some of the business of the day, we are no stranger, like you say, to hosting some of these big events. You think about Gauteng, for example. This is a province that, really has the largest share of the South African population, approximately 15.8 million people in this province. We have hosted before and have made a success of it when it comes to some of the big events.
Yes, indeed. You know that particularly the Gauteng province is no stranger to big events. The UN conference, you talk about the AU. So the province itself has got capacity in terms of infrastructure, whether you talk rail, road, and air. You have 3 airports that can assist in terms of arrivals. Waterkloof, you have also the OR Tambo, you have Lanseria, you also have a private airport near OR Tambo. And therefore, flying in and out will not be a problem. But also accommodation, you have enough hotels and B&Bs to accommodate the guests. In terms of the venue itself, you know that the Sandton Convention Center has been a venue that has hosted many events. You'd recall at some point in time we hosted the World Summit on Sustainable Development. This was a big UN conference where you had many leaders around the world who converged in Sandton to attend that summit. You'd recall during Tony Blair and Mugabe's standoff, Blair, keep your England, I'll keep my Zimbabwe. So Gauteng itself as the economic hub, as the largest city on the continent in terms of GDP, and I think it is ready to host such an event. And I think it will be important for the Gauteng government to start from tomorrow to think hard about how are they going to leverage on this important event to ensure that you are able to create jobs for those people who are looking for jobs, even though some of them you find a situation it won't be permanent jobs, but at least to have something. The World Cup left us with good infrastructure legacy that we always share with our neighbors. You know that all these different provinces where you have big areas where you can play soccer, sometimes our neighbors do come and use those facilities. So I think it will be of a benefit not only for South Africa but also for the region.
And as you say, I mean, Sandton, you know, the business district, they are often referred to as Africa's richest square mile. It speaks to the capability that the country has. But at the same time, you think about these year-long meetings that would have been taking place to get to this particular moment for these particular heads of state. But as they sit there are developments in Ukraine, there are developments in Russia, that as they sit there, they themselves don't agree. You know, and see eye to eye on some of these developments.
Yes, you heard earlier on our correspondent from Moscow talking about a decision taken by President Vladimir Putin to revise the nuclear capability of that country. After Ukraine launched those long-range missiles, after the United States of America, President Joe Biden agreed that they can use the US long-range weapons. And therefore, of course, tonight it's not going to be an easy night for people in Europe, because you don't know what Russia is going to do in terms of perhaps to retaliate. And therefore, at the summit, at the G20, they couldn't agree in relation to how they move on this issue of Ukraine and also the Middle East. They decided to focus on issues that they agree on, like fighting poverty, to ensure inclusivity and also development of developing countries, and of course the transformation of the multilateral institutions. But you have a situation where world leaders are in Brazil and there's a standoff now in Ukraine.
And let's talk about these multiple working groups that are at work all year long, and the amount of work that they now have to even get to the process where they then have to get deliberations, have to get declarations before they move to the next installment.
Well, the lead departments are the Department of International Relations and Treasury. So you will have those two first, you know, meeting and preparing, looking at budgets, and then ministerial meetings of member countries in South Africa. And the government will decide where are you going to have the finance ministers meeting, where are you going to have the central bank governors meeting, where are you going to have the foreign affairs ministers meeting. And later you'll also have other departments, for example, ministers of tourism. South Africa can take a decision that looking at a province like KwaZulu-Natal, which is known for tourism, you can take these ministers there, or you can take them to Cape Town. You have health, you have infrastructure, all these different departments and portfolios. Then you invite ministers who are members of states of the G20, and they will be spread across provinces. Some provinces will not be hosting ministerial meetings. It will be technocrats in terms of preparations, because perhaps a province doesn't have that kind of an infrastructure. For example, a province like Northern Cape, there's no way you can host foreign affairs ministers. So you might choose Cape Town, as we saw with BRICS, because now you have more foreign affairs ministers coming. So the government will ensure that all provinces do benefit, and they will decide who is doing what and when. And that will be a year long until the final summit that will be here in Johannesburg, in Gauteng.
And a lot of people looking forward to that, but please don't go too far, as we are still watching that closing ceremony there, which will also be a handing over ceremony. Remember, Brazil is the outgoing presidency when it comes to this G20 summit. Now South Africa will be taking over as of the 1st of December. Some of the issues you can expect South Africa to champion as far as the G20 summit is concerned when it comes to our shores is mobilizing financial resources for development, also looking at the growth and job creation in South Africa as well. A huge issue on economy there. Also illicit financial flows. Africa's debt crisis is also another issue that you can expect. So Sophie is not going too far as we are watching the closing and handing over ceremony. We are expecting President Lula da Silva then to close, at the same time hand over to President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will then give his own remarks on the way forward. That was our international news editor, Sophie Mokoena.